So, hi, welcome to another indie author interview. I am joined today by Caudle, who is the author of Worthy of Fate and Bound by Fate. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm super excited to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm really eager about this.
Awesome, awesome. So, let's just get right into it then. So, tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming an author, and what kind of made you finally take the jump into publishing your book.
Deciding to become an author kind of just happened. Um, the idea for Worthy of Fate is what came first, and I just started writing one day, and about 3 months later, I had an entire book. And then I was like, you know what? I spent all this time and put in all this effort writing this thing. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. I have at the time I was like I'm not gonna, even going to try to go trad or anything like that. I'm just going to self-publish because you know some of my favorite books in the entire world are self-published.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I'm going to be an indie author. And so that's really just how it started.
It sounds
And
pretty organic, like that it just happened the way that
it
it.
really did. Yeah. Um like I never had any aspirations as a kid to be an author or at any point. I have science and business degrees and so like writing was not anything that I ever thought that I would do.
No, totally. And I think that's kind of like a cool thing though, because it can be an outlet for you, right? It's like you're creative, getting your creativity out like in that way. And I think I've read Worthy of Fate like three times. And like I read the arc, I read the finished copy, and I listened to the audiobook. So like it's
You've read it more than I have.
I, I'm sure you've read it quite a few times with your editing process, but probably a different way. Um,
Well, like
for
I've
pleasure.
only read the finished version one time.
Mm,
But during the process, yeah, I read it 1,000 times.
but it's different. It's definitely a different. And so talking about process, how, you said that the book came together pretty quickly and you just wrote it. So
Yeah.
did you plan? Did you outline? Did you just plans? Or did you pants? What did you do?
I'm mostly a pantser, so I come up with everything on the fly. With Worthy of Fate, I did plot it out, but what I didn't realize is that I'd kind of plotted out the entire series because I thought that was going to be one book. And then when I got maybe like halfway through writing it, I went, oh, this is so much bigger than I thought it was. So, and when I say plot, like I loosely plot, I have like key points in the story that have to happen. So, and then that generally goes completely off the rails once I start writing.
That sounds really, really
Um,
cool.
yeah, that's it, that really is how it worked. But I will have, like I know where they need to get next. And so I just have to figure out how to get them there. And
Mm,
then as I'm writing, that's when characters start coming in out of nowhere. That's how the trials happened.
hmm.
Um, I will say the riddle in Worthy of Fate, I spent 3 weeks on. Took
I
me 3 whole weeks to come up with that riddle.
I always have like questions about when people have riddles and prophecies. I'm just like, how do you even write that? I don't even know. Like,
I probably had maybe 5 different ones. And I'm not good at riddles. So me coming, I was like, how am I going to come up with one if I'm not good at solving them? Um, but so I did like a ton of like playing around with it because once I got to the trial, I couldn't move on in the story until I came up with it because I needed to be able to create that, natural flow of how they got from here to there and how they came, and what was going to guide them to the next step, you
Mhm.
know?
No, absolutely. Um, and what do you enjoy most about writing in the fantasy genre? What just makes that feel like a really good niche for you?
Literally anything can happen.
Hmm.
That's I there I have no constraints. rather than if I were to write, based on our real world, I have so many constraints,
It's
you
true.
know. I can't make shadow men,
Yeah,
you know.
I actually wouldn't want shadow men in this world. I think we can keep them.
That'd be terrifying.
Yeah, I think
But
we'll keep them in the books and we can keep them in the books, you know, but like
mhm, yeah, but that's what I love is that I can, uh one of the things is be like, oh, I don't know why this happens because it's a fantasy. That's why.
hmm
Because it can, because I can literally come up with anything. I can make anything happen that comes to my imagination, and I love that freedom, that creative freedom,
And
you
such a
know?
beautiful thing to be able to, kind of, be able to, what is it? What's the word? See, ADHD is happening. Funnel, like, that creativity, like into that, into
Mhm.
like, and into, sometimes making a world that we wish that we could live in too.
Yeah.
Hmm
Uh, I certainly, I mean, I'd be scared if I lived
Yeah.
in, you know, if I lived in my world, but I would love it. I would love it's the characters. And as I'm getting ready to write the third and final book, I'm terrified because I'm
If
going
you're
to
terrified,
miss
I
them.
am too.
Well, I'm terrified because a lot's going to happen, but I'm also terrified because it's going to end
It
and I'm
is.
not going to be there anymore. And I don't know. I don't It's a very bittersweet feeling for a world that I have spent, the last year and a half in, and that I put so much of my time and energy. And these characters to me are real. They live inside me. They tell me where they're going. They tell me what they're going to do next. And I'm like, okay, this is where we're going, you know?
I love that
So
way of describing writing. Like I think that that's just so I don't know, it feels like lyrical in a way. It's like they tell me where I need to go and I just love that.
it really is true. So the entire story of Worthy of Fate started with Odarum. I pictured a winged horse and I had a couple of scenes that popped into my head. And I was like, okay, where is this going? You
Hmm
know? And then Kaya came in, and then Riker, and then every other character, and to the point that I've fallen in love with every single one of them.
And I feel like that is also just such a gift that we give to ourselves when we're writing, or reading is that like you can fall in love with that character. And like it just must be such a surreal thing to, have that character be on paper in a book forever that you can just always go back to and just be like, "Oh, like I wrote that."
Yeah, it really is. And my husband and I joke all the time that, maybe one day this will be a full-time thing, because right now it's not, but I could make a full-time, a living off of, my hallucinations that I put down on paper.
That is the dream. That is the dream. And so, as you're writing this third and final book, what does your writing space look like so that you can stay focused?
Like physically.
Physically, yes.
So I would say half of my writing is actually done in my car
That's a
because
different
I
one. I
do,
never heard that one before.
yeah, uh, well over half of Worthy of Fate was written in my car, just sitting in the driver's seat, on my 15-minute breaks at work, my lunch break. Um, I have internet in my car. I was able to pay like $20 a month to get
Yeah.
internet in my car. And so I go out there and I just, type away. And then um I have silence, but then when I'm at home, it's usually in my bed. So I'm just, sitting in bed, typing away, usually in the evening, just because I'm a little bit more distracted with kids and home, home chores and stuff like that. I will pop in headphones and listen to um, like classical music, usually like movie scores.
hmm
So, but that's it.
That's actually really cool. And I like that you wrote like a lot of it, like
Mhm.
in 15-minute increments too. It's like writing sprints, kind of.
Yes, yeah, most of it was
Cool.
in writing sprints
Cool.
or really late at night for maybe an hour, two max, if I'm lucky, because I have to put my kids to bed and all that. And so I don't get to write till after that. And
Hmm.
then, of course, some on weekends. But I would plan a writing weekend where I would say, okay, kids, you're going to grandma's. And then I bought my husband a big old Lego set. And I'm like, here, don't talk to me for a few hours.
I love that. That's so funny. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Um, and so what do you find, other than practically time, what do you find is your kryptonite? What gets in your way as a writer?
That's tough. Aside from time, because I wish I could just stay up all night long and write, or it would be much easier if I could do this full time.
Hmm.
But I would say time constraint, probably myself and my self-criticism,
Hmm.
you know, as every author struggles and don't if you ever think that an author does not struggle, it doesn't matter if it's Sarah J. Maas or Rebecca Yarros, every single one of them struggles, especially with any type of criticism. Something negative will stick with you 10 times harder than 10 of the most positive things you could hear.
Hmm.
It's just human nature. So hearing, it's myself. It's my personal thing. So I try to just block everything out and just write, which writing sprints really helps me with that because I force myself not to think. Like, don't think, just start typing. And then the story just comes.
Exactly. Like stream of consciousness sometimes is the best way to kind of get that out. And I mean, I think that that's a really common theme is comparing yourself to other authors, like other authors who,
Hmm.
I mean, I think I've seen a lot happen lately, where authors, publish indie and then they get picked up by trad and then, those sort of things like, oh, like I wish that, I could get a deal, that way and whatnot. And it doesn't mean that your story is not good. It just means that, there's a lot more that goes into, getting picked up by a traditional publisher rather than indie publishing. But it's also the timeline too, of doing things like you said on your terms. Like you were able to like write your book super quick and like, get it edited and go through those processes and get it out. And I mean, a year and a half and two books, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot. So I really wrote two books in, I think it was like 13 months.
Wow.
So, because I started writing Worthy of Fate in June of 2023, published it in April, and then I started writing Bound by Fate immediately after it published. So I started it at the end of April, and then I finished it at the beginning of July.
Mm.
So start to finish for both books, it was 13 months, and I had to I had to take a break
Hmm.
after that for sure because it's grueling. It really is.
It is.
Because it's not just writing it. You've got to do the research and you stay up really late and you've got to rewrite things and you have to go through all the editing because my editing process is grueling, you
Mhm.
know, because I go through I think 6 rounds of editing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Um, I also wanted to say that this is something that I do. I would say probably a really good portion of my books are inside of notebooks. So like I'm currently, like this was all what I just jotted down last night
Mhm.
for my current work in progress. And just like jotting down ideas or if I just need to kind of flesh out a scene, but I'm not quite there yet. Um, so I actually write in a notebook a lot of the time.
Mm. And I mean, nothing's better than pen and paper, and kind of being able to have that. Like, and I think that it's a different experience, especially in the world of computers and, and all that
Hmm.
thing. So let's go into talking about why don't we start with Worthy and go to Worthy of Fate in case there's somebody who hasn't heard, unfortunately, of you before because you're missing out. If you had to describe Worthy of Fate in one sentence or less, what is that sentence?
I had this. I actually wrote it down.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah, I did. I had an elevator pitch written down. I should memorize it. Kaya is a fae who was marked by the gods at birth, and she has to go through a trial in order to become worthy. And whenever she does, she is given a task by her god in order to help save the world from a plague that has been decimating it. Along the way, she meets her mate, Riker, but they are forbidden from being with each other because the fate of his people as well as the realm could rest in their hands.
Mm, mm.
There. That was
I love
the
it.
shortest, best way.
But it's short and sweet and it gets the point across. Like I loved the trial piece and the mythology that you were able to weave was just absolutely amazing.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and so who was your favorite character to write and why?
I get asked this all the time,
It's so
and it's so
it's
hard. It is
biased.
so hard because they're all a piece of me, you
Absolutely.
know? From POV, my favorite to write is the male Riker. So I like writing from his POV, and I think it has to do with the fact that I know what I want him to think, you know? And I think that's one thing all women, we know what we want the male to think, which is why we like men written by women, you
Mhm.
know?
Absolutely.
Um,
100%.
so I loved writing from his POV, being in his mind. It was just fascinating. And I had one, two, three different guys read his POV and be like, is this somewhat realistic as to what a man would think? And, they help me, correct me or point me in the right direction. But as far as character overall in Worthy of Fate, I loved writing Melina and Odarum. They're so fun. I love, being able to get out that witty, uh that bantery type funny character.
Totally. And so maybe it's the same or maybe it's different. Who was the most challenging character to write and why?
Mm, uh, I haven't been asked that. I don't know. In Worthy of Fate, I would probably say, well, POV wise, Kaya, just because I didn't want her to be annoying. I didn't want her to be, I was like, I was adamant to not make her whiny and,
He was not.
yeah. So I was very adamant about that. I wanted her to be strong and I wanted to showcase that. As far as which specific character in the book, oh gosh, I really don't know.
It's hard. It's a hard question
It
because
is really hard.
I think, the way that you've spoken about your writing process and the way you've written, it kind of came like pretty naturally. Um,
Mhm.
so, I think for me, like it's daunting to write the male main character because you want them to be like on this pedestal, like the ideal male
Yeah.
character. And comparing them to like other male main characters. I think that's what makes writing them hard because it's like you don't want them all to be a Reese. You don't want them all to be a Zayden. Like you want them to be
Yeah.
their own thing that,
Hmm.
one day will come and be that. Like Riker will be a household name. Let's
That
replace.
would be really cool.
But, I think I think it is challenging and you know, I think everybody has such different, I mean, obviously I'm a reviewer and that's kind of like my main thing, but some people can be like really spicy when they want to write reviews and say that somebody sounds this way or say somebody, sounds that way. So reviews are always really tough too. I think that's challenging in itself because like you said, you put a part of yourself in each of these characters and if
Hmm.
someone doesn't like them, you're like, "Oh, they don't like that."
And I'll tell you this, any fantasy romance writer is we actually had a big conversation about this on Threads, and it was like a trend almost
Wow.
about how is your book compared to ACOTAR or Fourth Wing? Because every single fantasy romance author gets that. It doesn't matter what it is. It
Hmm.
could have someone who has a similar sounding name or just whatever, but that's generally every fantasy author has to go through that because as much as I'm an ACOTAR girl, as much as the next person, they're amazing for a reason. They're popular for a reason. And Sarah J. Maas has just really raised the bar, right? And whether any of us could ever get to that point is unlikely, but it's going to be compared,
Hmm.
you know. And
Absolutely.
so that part really it does sting. It is difficult to deal with and, respond to,
Mhm.
and someone goes, "Oh, you're this sounds exactly like this." And I'm like, "Yeah, probably, I guess."
Yeah. And I think that's the conversation of like, is anything like not, untouched now? Like Faye is,
Mhm.
Faye are huge. Like, you know, it doesn't mean like Sarah didn't create Faye. Like they existed before her and they have existed after her, but like you said, it's kind of like held to that standard. And so yeah, maybe they do similar things. Maybe they have similar courts. Maybe they have similar powers, but each book is its own thing, or it should be at least.
Exactly. So I watched quite a few videos from Brandon Sanderson.
I love him. Oh my
He's
God.
he's
I
fantastic. He's
finished uh the Stormlight Archive like a couple weeks ago. Oh, it's so good.
he's brilliant. He really
He
is.
has a new
Um,
he has a new lecture series coming out.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I guess the last one he recorded was 4 years ago and now he's doing it again. So I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it as well. I learned a lot, especially when he said that there are only like six types of stories.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And so I went and I certainly researched it. And I said, when you really think about it, there are only six kinds of stories. That is that's the only way. And I thought about every single story I've ever read, and I'm like, they're all like this, every
Mhm.
single one of them. And I was like, I never knew. And it actually made me feel better because I was like, okay, so because every author wants to come up with that original idea, you
Yeah.
know, but it's hard. So you just have to take your story because no matter what similarities your book will have, it is original because it happened in a different way with different characters in a different place, you know, with a different, situation. So it is uniquely yours.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go find that one because I definitely wanna watch that for my own purposes. And so in Worthy of Fate, do you have a favorite quote or a favorite scene?
Um, my favorite quote would probably be, well, two of them. I can't pick. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll do
There's
both.
there's 165,000 words. It's so hard for me to narrow what's your favorite
Yeah.
5 words. And I'm like, that's a lot.
Ah.
Um, so you can't escape your shadow. I love that line. It's why it became the tagline for that book. And then also, you are worthy in more ways than one. This title does not define you, it describes you. So that was by Eamon talking to Kaya. And I love those two.
I love that. Oh, both of those are just absolutely amazing. And sometimes you have to sit back and say, wow, I wrote that because like beautiful, just like amazing. Um, And, when we write, sometimes we picture our characters to look a certain way with certain traits. Sometimes we have aesthetic bores and things like that. Is there anyone that is in this world today that inspired either Kaya or Riker, like looks wise, like any actors, actresses, models?
Um, Riker took somewhat from my husband, looks
Hmm.
wise. Hold on one second. Sorry, my dog was bounding down the
You're
stairs.
okay. You're okay.
It's so loud. Um, can you hear him?
No,
Okay, good. Because he's breathing really heavily right now.
no, I can't hear anything. So
He's
really
so
good
excited. Oh,
headphones.
thanks. Um, but so Riker took, you know, inspiration from my husband. My husband is, 6'4", dark hair, handsome. Like I got myself a fictional character for a husband. Okay. Um, and then Kaya, she took, I mean, naturally, I think she took after me, brown hair, green eyes, and she's much more in shape than I am. But, you know, I think but for everyone else, really what I did is I kind of went to Pinterest and I found like inspiration because I actually don't see my characters.
hmm I've heard
Uh,
that.
I can't, I can't see them in my head. So for me to describe them, I have to go find a photo. So
hmm
I would just find someone, I'm like, oh, there we go. That one.
I really like that your two main characters are inspired by you and your husband in some ways.
Hmm.
I really like that. I haven't heard that one before, and I think that's wonderful because obviously, like you said, you married a fictional, you know, male main character. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. The dedication for Worthy of Fate is to my husband.
Mm,
So
it's beautiful. I love that.
it's of course it's not the story is nowhere near ours, but
Really?
it was
I don't
just
know. You haven't gone through
yeah.
it.
I mean, I asked him if he had like secret wings, and he was like, no. He said he'll work on the shadow powers though.
That is so funny. All right, so let's go to the last part of the interview here, which is just some fun questions. So in all of your free time that you must have, other than reading and writing, what are some things that you enjoy in life?
With all my free time. Um, I mean, I do spend time with my family with any amount of free time that I have, but what I love doing is I love woodworking.
Wow.
So it's I've been doing it since I was in high school. Um, I build furniture. So like the desk that
Cool.
this is on, my coffee table, my son's beds, benches, um, this big shelf.
That is so
So,
different. That's such a cool hobby.
oh, thanks.
Very cool.
Um, but yeah, outside of reading, writing, and spending time with my family, which are the main ones, it's woodworking.
Wow. So cool. And so this is my favorite question of the whole interview is who are some authors or books that you would recommend?
I don't know if you've seen my page and what I do, but I like recommending books.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Now you want me to narrow it down to just a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just pick a few.
Okay. I'll do some outside of ACOTAR, which, I recommend. I think that is in a wonderful introductory fantasy
Mhm.
genre
I
or series. And then, you know, the entire SJM universe. I haven't read Throne of Glass. I might get to it someday.
agree.
But Carissa Broadbent's, especially Daughter of No Worlds series, the
Yeah.
War of Lost Hearts, love that. Sharissa Weeks, The Witch Collector,
hmm
Melissa Rorick, Lady of Darkness,
hmm
Mallory Benjamin, Lake of Sapphire.
That one I haven't heard of.
That is
That's my list.
in my top of all time. Um,
Mallory Sapphire,
Lake of Sapphire.
Lake of Sapphire.
Yes, by Mallory Benjamin. The Memory Puller by Chris Haynes.
Yes, I have that
That
one.
I love that one. Oh my gosh, there's just so many. Um,
Those are all really
really, honestly, if you go to my page, I recommend books all the time because while I'm, writing a book, there's more books out there in the world. I spend a year writing a book and it takes you guys 3 days to read it, which I'm really happy for.
I mean, me too. Like
But in the meantime, time, you guys need more to read, so I like to recommend what I personally love.
I mean, I see some of my favorites right behind your head there. Rick Riordan, right?
Okay, I have not read any of these. These are all my husband's.
Oh, they're, oh my gosh, all amazing. I mean, now he's writing Percy Jackson in high school, getting ready to go to college. Oh my God, it's just so good. You should read them. Um,
On my YouTube, all I get, I'll say spicy fantasy romance recommendations, and people will throw in the comments, Percy
what?
Jackson. I'm like, no, no,
What?
no. But literally, I'll get 50 comments, and 40 of them say Percy Jackson.
I mean, Percy Jackson, yes, but it's not spicy. I
I know, and I'm
know what
like,
book you've
it's
been
not
reading.
spicy. It's also not adult.
Exactly. Which that's like the only like middle grade YA that like I will read usually. But anyway, I digress. I mean, you like mythology and that sort of thing, so you'd like it. Um, so if you had to give advice to a younger you or an aspiring author, what would that advice be?
Slow down.
That's so
We
hard. Literally the story of my life, having ADHD.
it's mainly because I'm tr constantly trying to push myself way past my own boundaries and what I'm physically capable of doing because I see these authors releasing 3, 4 books a year. And I'm like, I would love to do that,
Yeah,
but I can't.
yeah.
And so I push myself to the brink of breaking, if not beyond. And then I keep pushing. And so my advice to myself or an aspiring author is to take your time. It is okay. You get your books out when they are ready. Every author and every author's journey is so uniquely different,
Mm,
and that is okay. Take your time with it to get out the story and don't break yourself in the process.
I love that advice. I do. And
And
it,
also go to Word Hippo.
Word Hippo?
Word Hippo,
What is
the
Word Hippo?
best re is one of the best resources I have ever found. I don't remember who it was. Someone mentioned it as like a writing resource, so I went to it's like the best thesaurus, online thesaurus in the world.
Oh my
You
God.
go into Word Hippo, you type in a word, and it gives you thousands of options depending on what you're trying to talk about and use that word and what content. It's amazing. Please go check it out.
I am going to go check it out. This is awesome. And so we talked about listening to music while
Mhm.
writing. So like very like classical, like cinematic movie scores.
Yeah,
So
that's a more recent development. All of Worthy of Fate was written in silence.
mm, mm, definitely interesting about how those things change, like as your journey and your process as a writer.
Someone mentioned to listen to music that didn't have words because if it has words, I get too distracted and I
Mhm.
need it to be something that's in the background to just keep my overactive brain to chill,
Absolutely.
because I kept trying to go to my phone and, whatever, and then I get distracted. Next thing I know, I've been on my phone for 30 minutes and I'm like, oh. Um, so yeah, like movie scores, classical music, not necessarily classical, but instrumental only. So, you know, um, like Harry Gregson Williams, Hans Zimmerman, um, let's see, who else? Lindsay
Sterling.
Sterling, that's it. I
I
almost
love
said Straub. That's
she
an author.
it is. She's stunning. Um,
Mhm.
and so is there anywhere real or imagined that has inspired you when you created your world? Anywhere you've traveled, like, like I mean, some people say, I mean, Game of Thrones, like obviously is like very, Scottish Highlands, like, very that sort of thing. Like, is there anywhere that has inspired your world when you created it?
No, not not anywhere real. So the world, literally all of it came to me as I wrote, including the rip. I don't know where it came from. It just happened.
Came from your brain somewhere.
The, Mora, the Great Library. It just appeared, and I was like, I wrote it and then I kind of envisioned it as to the best that I can. I really can't envision, not in my head. I don't see pictures and images. But I just imagine this giant spire of glass, essentially. Not glass, like obsidian is what it's made out of. And but yeah, there wasn't any place in our world that inspired it.
Mm.
But the yeah, I don't know. I never really thought about that.
I mean, it's a hard question. It's a hard question, but I mean, your world that you've created is absolutely unique, absolutely wonderful, and
Thank
amazing.
you.
So, if anybody is feeling super interested after this and wants to meet you and get a signed copy, is there anywhere they can do that in the next year?
Yes, so that is there's a lot up in the air right now. A lot. The only ones that I 100% know that I will be going to, while I have 9 on my books for 2025, the only ones that I know for certain I will be going to is a Polycon and Villains and Vixens in September in Dallas.
Mm. Two really awesome conventions, and a
Yes.
lot of lovely authors are going to be there. So make sure that if you guys are looking for a book event, book setting event, check out a Polycon, check out Villains and Vixens. Those are on my bucket list to get to one day, which I will, just not this month, not this year. But thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I've really enjoyed hearing about your writing process and Worthy of Fate, and I can't wait for book three. Really, truly cannot wait. And I can't wait for my special editions to come because I'm super excited.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really has been a pleasure. And if anybody ever wants to talk about the writing or anything like that, you're always welcome to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to authors.
Absolutely. Really good advice, too. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.